Welcome back, everybody. This is Spirit Rescue Talk. I am your host, Amy Major, and of course, you know my co-host, Jordan Start. We're back again for another amazing episode today, and of course, you can see we have a great guest with us today. I'm going to tell you a little bit about how amazing she is. We have Diana Palm with us today. She is a medium, a healer, and of course, a rescue medium, which is we love that here. She's actually been a medium for over 30 years. And how amazing is that when you get to devote most of your life to being able to do spirit work and be able to be of service for spirit and for other people. She does work a lot with grief and grief counseling and helping people move past their pain or trauma. So it's really the most amazing type of service to get yourself into. And spirit, I'm sure, pushed her in that direction as much as spirit pushes us all in the direction we're all supposed to be in. So we're going to talk a little bit with Diana, see how she's got to where she was today, and maybe find out a little bit about where she's going in the future and how rescue mediumship is going to grow and how much we're going to learn from her so that new rescue mediums can come on and kind of ask questions and learn from her and learn from the show and be the best rescue mediums they can be. So I want to say a big thank you to Diana for coming on, and we're so excited to have you. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, I've been kind of watching some of your videos and seeing you on Facebook. I think, you and I do very similar things. I'm sure we've been watching each other through the years. And I really wanted to get some specialists on the show that really know their stuff.
Yeah.
Because like I was telling you before we started, this show is really about education and helping people learn what rescue mediumship really is, but all forms of mediumship and all forms of spiritual healing as well. But before we kind of go into the meat and potatoes of your work as a rescue medium, can you tell us just a little bit about your journey and how you got to where you are today?
Yeah, for sure. This is certainly something that I did not pick for myself. I think you have a calling, and that's when you just cannot get away from it, no matter what you do.
Yeah.
So I've always, I just at a certain point I had to embrace it. But that came early for me. In 1995, I went on a spiritual pilgrimage to Medjugorje, Bosnia, and I had the opportunity there to work with a healing priest who actually told me that this was my calling. And he taught me how to do exorcisms and worked with me quite a bit on healing my DNA, my family lineage, and things like that. So that was a really big, huge door opener. And for me, a green light. I was pulled to this. I was called to it. But growing up in a Catholic family, I was always told, oh, don't do that. That's evil. And mediumship is bad. And so I was always like, reining myself back in. But when I had the Catholic priest tell me, no, this is your calling. When I came back to America, I just dove into classes and I just never stopped learning and growing and developing. So it just was something that was decided for me, basically. And it has been a difficult journey at different times because sometimes with the rescue work and the hauntings, you're also dealing with entities, attachments, demons. But I guess I have the inner strength for that and the knowledge and the skill for that. So I don't fear it. And it's really important for people sometimes to have that done before they can accept the healing part. So it was a pretty radical start for me.
Absolutely. One thing as we were looking up Diana, one thing I really appreciated about your website was that when I was, doing my little look-see, was that you really encompass a lot of things in your practice. And I can imagine there's a lot of overlap with that.
There really is. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, you can't even get away with it, get away from certain aspects because I've been doing healing for so long. Sometimes when you're doing like the heavy haunting work and you're doing heavy paranormal work, there was a time when I kind of got a little burnt out and I was like, oh, I just want to be in a higher vibration. So I kind of changed my branding, my focus for a while, just really working with the human heart, healing broken hearts. And that just opened up so many more portals to grief and helping people. But then it led back full circle to helping them with mediumship and connecting with the afterlife and clearing the entities. So when people are having a grief, experiencing trauma, they're also getting attacked. And so you cannot get away from it any which direction you go. So, you know, I just find that it's funny because I like trying to get in a higher vibration. You're like, oh, we're back. Okay. You know, and it's like, it just adds more petals to the flower. It's still all about healing the human soul, healing the heart, and helping people live a happy, you know, full life here. And also ensuring that their loved ones are safe on the other side. That has everything to do with their healing of their grief too.
Mm-hmm.
It does. It does. And I understand that wanting to stay balanced. My guides always say you got to stay balanced with the work you're doing, because getting into rescue work, it's almost like you're going to the deep end of the ocean.
Yes.
You know, you're really having to go into that real thickness and the darkness, and it can consume you at times, or it can just overpower you, overwhelm you. And so we kind of go up to the higher, lighter spiritual work.
Yeah.
I feel just to breathe, just to relax, just for a little while. So that's really great that you're able to do that.
Definitely. Yeah. You can't stay in that vibration all the time. You know, a light worker is working up, you know, at all the vibrations, right? And I think we get better at holding a certain vibration over the years where we can go down and do the work and come back up. But for a long time in my career, it was just, I was inundated with it. And I was living with partners that were very susceptible to spiritual attack and entities. And it was just, it was constant daily stuff in my home. My daughter and I'd be like, don't you come in our house unless you've cleared off, you know, and it was like inundated. And I look back now, and even though that was really, really heavy to experience in your home, in your relationship, and in your career, those are some of the things that gave me the wisdom and the strength that I have today. So I wouldn't have changed it for anything. You know, it's like learning in the soup, like learning right there.
No. What I really appreciate about that, Diana, is I can already tell, I'm like, oh, we have some very similar experiences in doing this work, which I find very interesting. The more, you know, different mediums come in with different life experiences, and you can see the patterns. But one thing I really appreciate about what you just said there is there's an acknowledgement of, yes, this can impact other people around us. And at the same time, you guys took accountability of saying you better, like, you know, clear yourself. Like, you still put like some of the accountability on other individuals to take care of their own wellness. And being inundated in it, it's a whole other ballgame. But I can also imagine the people coming to you for support, for guidance. There's a difference of somebody who's learned it from a textbook versus somebody who's learned it through going with it.
Yeah.
Part of my day job was working as a clinical counselor. And sometimes I'll say something, and my clients will look at me and be like, you've been through something. So I'll be like, what makes you say that? And they're like, because people who learn from a textbook wouldn't have known to say that.
Right.
You wouldn't have known that, but you going through it yourself and seeing the impact through your own training, your own development, your own, you know, experiences. I would imagine really resonate with some of the people that you're helping, to help them not feel so alone, to help them have some hope that, hey, I've been through this. So I, you know, and they can see it when you're on the other side of it.
Yeah. Yes, definitely. And I look back at like quite a few of my partners were really attacked, and I thought, is God doing this on purpose just to make me really, really good, you know, and also more spiritual boundaries, and really, really learning how to anchor the light, and really learning how to not let that knock you off your axis, you know. It's like being in boot camp. And they were good people, but they had issues that were unhealed. And that's why I like to always combine this with understanding trauma. People that have unhealed trauma are magnets for attachments, you know, and so you can't just go in and clear a person of their attachments and not address the trauma, because they're still walking around like a magnet looking for another attachment. Mm-hmm. That is the open doorway that they get in. So you have to continue to do your healing to maintain your space and teach people that kind of self-care. And not just self-care, we are all intertwined. So if you have somebody in your home that's like upsetting everything because they're bringing home stuff, it's very disruptive. And so eventually with that partner, you know, we did part ways. We did get divorced, and it was like, you know, and I wish him well and everything, but it was just too tumultuous for me, and I couldn't I didn't want to stay in that energy. So when somebody's not doing the work, it's like, well, we're going to have to part because like I honor my path, and I like to have people for clients, not as partners, that are going through it.
Oh, that's so
Mhm.
important. That is so important. Can't say I've been married 18 years, be 19 years this year, and the things that my partner has gone to go through, and he's had attachments as well, and we're always very mindful. But the moment he knows, he's like,
Yeah.
Amy, clear me. What's going on? you know,
Yeah.
and we moved into a house in Derry, New Hampshire. And after a few weeks of him being in the basement and making kind of like a guy's cave and man cave down there, he's like, I feel different. Something's going on. I'm like, oh, did you talk to the old man in the basement? That's a spirit. He's like, I think he's with me. And I'm like, get up here. Let's clear him out. I
Yeah.
cleared the spirit out, but he's just like, I don't mean any harm. I was just I needed some, help. I wanted to feel better. So I said, fine, you stay in the basement, but you stay there and you don't mess with anybody. Well, that didn't work out so well. We were watching Poltergeist one night, and he starts walking up the stairs because he's interested in what's on the TV. And he's looking at it. He's like, what is this? I'm like, get your butt back down in that basement right now. And he looked at me. He ran across the room, and he pushed me off the couch. And I was like, Jordan knows me. Oh, that's it. I've had enough.
The gloves
And
are
so I cleared him out of my house so fast. And it was like, I tried to be nice. I tried to be helpful. And by saying that, trying to get people to understand that not all earthbound spirits have to be crossed right away. Some that just don't want to go because we can't force them to cross over. It goes against their free will. But they're not allowed to jump into people. They're not allowed to harass people. They're not allowed to take away anybody else's free will. But they can't stay if they're being nice. What kind of experience?
Can I address that? Because I have a slightly different perspective on that.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is my belief system, my training, and this is the way that I work, because people ask me that all the time. And a lot, especially on paranormal teams and working with different mediums and stuff, and everyone's learning from different places.
Mm-hmm.
I work a little bit differently in that this is the reason why I always put them in the light. There's a very short window of time when they still have free will after their death, and they can choose to go into the light or not. But after that, they don't have free will, and they also don't have access to the light. So they do need a medium to open the portal and send them. They're not able to access it after 9 days. So when I encounter a ghost at any location, I will cross it over, and I'll just open up the portal, send them up to God. They can come back and visit right away if they want to. It doesn't take any time, but they don't actually have the free will to do this on their own at that point. So I always tell people, one reason I want to do that is because that soul needs to be at peace. They're still walking around with their physical pain and trauma, their earthly drama. They're still attached to unfinished business. And because of that, everybody connected to that spirit is also not able to heal their grief. There is an unhealed energy connected to them that has not moved forward yet. So all the bereaved are still feeling it intuitively and in their DNA. And so they're not healing their grief. And when they cross over, so that soul's being healed, the family's beginning to shift their grief, and also the vibration on earth it gets raised because it's another healed soul. So that is always the way that I work. Yeah, so that's if they had the ability to go on their own, it'd be a different story. But when we find them in places, it's like, oh, well, we know that having a ghost in the house is draining the energy of the living. That's their life force because they're disconnected. So we get a lot of childhood illnesses, ear infections, sinus infections. You get a lot of moody grown-ups, that struggle with depression. Those are often from unhealed spirits, ghosts, or it could also be entities. So I am 100% about keeping your spiritual sanctuary, keeping it a certain vibration.
Yeah, I'm sure Jordan has a lot of questions about the entities.
Oh, absolutely. And I know And I know that's the beauty of this industry, right? Is everybody has their own experiences and
Yeah.
expertise, right? I know, like me, doing a lot of entity removal, my frequency is naturally very low, so I can go to the darkies. And so when I do come across an earthbound sometimes that are a little bit lower in their frequency, maybe they have a lot of trauma, like you were kind of mentioning, Diana, or some of their own grievances, some of their own, some of them are really angry depending on what happened, whatever the life circumstances,
Yeah.
sometimes we talk about risk. And I'll say, there is risk in staying earthbound. And I'll explain. I said, you're at a lower frequency. There's also some other creepy crawlies that might be a little bit low. And so here's, and I'll give them some of the options of, hey, like, do you want to go to a healing space? Because, I can understand that you're not quite ready yet, maybe to go to the light yet. Maybe that's a little bit, but how can I help you get to a place where you'll be maybe a little bit more accepting of that support? Because work as a trauma counselor in my J job. And sometimes people need like a little bit of the guidance, right? Let me do a little bit of hand holding. You're not ready to go through that big door yet, but let me get you through the little one. So, okay, how can I help you raise your frequency up a little bit? Give you some choices, give you some options, because there is risk. Sometimes in staying earthbound, even I see a lot of earthbounds where they're in a hostage situation. They've got an entity kind of hanging around them, manipulating them a little bit. And there's risk for some of the earthbounds depending on where their frequency kind of sits. So I can appreciate like I want to help getting them to that safety, to that security, because it does have an impact, and the ripple effect of that, Diana, even what you mentioned, like the impact on the home and the impact on the people living there. We're not separate. We're all energy.
Right. So, it's amazing. Like, I've learned so much from the ghosts over the years, and, connecting with them. They're like, one of the Civil War soldiers, he was still in pain, and I'm like, for me, I'm like, I can't stand that this spirit has been carrying pain. And I know time's different on the other side, but just the thought of he's never had peace, and everyone goes, oh, they're in a better place. Well, no, they're not. You better check, because if they're not, you do want to send them into the light, because they're still carrying every amount of their physical pain and trauma, emotional and everything else with them till the very moment they go into the light. So like I said, like, there's 9 days after the window of when they have free will, and then they don't. And they do need a medium to step in and do the rescue work.
Is that something that you were told or something that you experienced?
Both.
The 9 days.
Both. It is generally agreed upon within religions around the world. It's hard to find information on currently. I've tried to look at that up. I'm like, I should probably get that written down. I can't find it anymore. But when I first learned it about 20 years ago, there was information online, because I validate all the information I teach or I learn before I teach it. And I've been teaching this work for a very long time. But yeah, also, I always let people know, like, my daughter and I, we'd be driving somewhere and there'd be an accident. We'd see the deceased, the ghost, waving us down like, hey, I need help. I just got in a car accident. We're like, darn it. Anyway, the ambulance already went off with the body, but the ghost is there. And my daughter and I are just like, we drive this road all the time. We'll check back in 9 days. If he is still there waving his arms on the top of the hill, we're going to send him to the light. But we always respect their 9-day window, because that is when they have their free will. And it's after that point that if they stay, they get anchored, magnetized to the location that they're in at that time, and they lose their connection. So they can't go around and visit their friends. They're literally trapped at that location when the window closes. So they can't send dreams. They can't check on their loved ones. They're just very, very limited, and still carrying all their pain. So as soon as we find them like that, we're like, okay, let's go ahead. Boom. My daughter's always like, she used to always tell me, Mom, just don't do it when you're driving. I'll do it. Keep your eyes on the road. I'll get them. I'm like, all right.
Some good advice, stay focused on the road.
But, when you're sensitive and you're always in that energy, you become very aware. We couldn't even go to antique stores. I couldn't breathe. And everything we bought had entities or attachments or ghosts, and we're like, I just would tell my daughter, same kind of scenario. I'm driving home and we're like, hit it, and she'd clear everything in the back seat before we'd get home and unpack. We're like, we probably wouldn't have even bought half the stuff if we had cleared it in the store, because the whole reason we were attracted to it is because it had an unhealed energy that we were supposed to take care of.
Support,
Yeah.
It's a very interesting life being a sensitive, especially when you can connect with earthbound spirits or with entities.
Yeah.
Life changes. You got to consider things differently than what you ever had to before.
Yes, it is very different. And I think people sometimes are on the fence, but when you really fully embrace it and you're just like, it's not a lifestyle, it's your life. And these things are real. And, people are experiencing them, whether or not they're sensitive to them. But thankfully, there are people like you guys and, others that are sensitive enough and have skills that put themselves in service to be able to help, because it's universal. Everybody experiences it, whether they're aware of it or not.
Now, I know you've probably had the same experience that I have with skeptics who are constantly questioning the fact that earthbound spirits exist at all. I mean, you see a lot of videos out there. I've had a little bit of some disputes with well-known mediums behind the scenes in a very respectful way, but, holding my ground. What would be your best response to someone who challenges you saying earthbound spirits don't exist because there is no free will in the death process? They all transition into the light, and anything left behind are just fragments or memories of their energy. What would you say to somebody that would come to you with that?
Well, I actually don't get challenged with that anymore, but early in my career, I did a lot. And what I did at the time is I decided I'm a Capricorn. So what I did was I joined a paranormal group to get scientific evidence, and I did that since 2004. I was first working with several different paranormal groups, and then I started my own because I didn't want to work with people that weren't crossing over anymore. So I trained up my own team, and we would go in and clear hauntings, help people that were haunted, and do all the work. So I did that. I did proof of the afterlife presentations where I would share my evidence, and I honor like the old guys, I call them, like Edison, Tesla, all the people, the great minds. They all believed in mediumship, and they were all collecting data on it. And so I'm a big proponent of collecting proof in the form of photographs, EVPs, beyond personal experience. So that gave me the foundation to know that it wasn't woo-woo at all. It's extremely scientific and extremely natural and universal. So I think a lot of it's just education. People are going to be stuck in their dogma if they're from a religion that just wants to be that way, and that's okay. It's not my job to educate them. They're going to have whatever limited life experience that they've chosen. I'm here to help the people that are open to it, that want the help, that want to learn, that feel a calling.
Well, the reality is, there's a million one ways of doing this work, right? And some souls are ready to step through certain doors, and other souls, that's just not their journey in this lifetime.
Right.
Totally okay. There's a place for everybody here in the different modalities and the different practices, because there's certain things I know, even in my journey, there were big moments where I'm like, that's not for me. And then a few years later, I'd come back to it. I'm like, now it's time for me. Okay, this is not my door.
Yeah. And I've worked with quite a few priests, teaching them what I know, because some of them have written books, and one of them mentioned me in his book, is really sweet. But he was like, I'm a reluctant believer. And I'm like, you're a priest. But he had people coming to him that were confessing that they were under spiritual attack, and they didn't know where else to go. And he was like, oh my God, I have to help them. So he had to educate himself and learn about it. And now he's in a really amazing position to really be able to help the people that come to him. So yeah, a lot of the old dogmas kept that out, and I think it was intentional. I think a lot of people that dabble can do harm unintentionally.
Yeah.
And so I think when somebody has a calling, they really need to get trained and have certain spiritual strength, which means, for me, it doesn't mean going in there like a bully. It means doing your own healing work so that you can carry enough light in your body to stay safe and protected, and to know like your spiritual strength, your vibration is solid.
I know that, they're talking about people being attacked energetically. And we were talking a little bit about the psychology of it, that most people that have issues with chronic mental health disorders attract a lot of these energies. Can you explain a little bit about how people can tell, if there are any ways to tell? Jordan and I both work on this for a living as well. We have our own ways of being able to tell if somebody is under attack. But what are the normal circumstances in which you would say somebody probably is under attack?
Well, I mean, the obvious one is going to be like if you walk in and you start smelling like sulfur, like you walk in your house and it smells like rotten eggs. You're like, okay, something has been sent to me or something is hovering in my house that shouldn't be here. So you have some actual things in your environment. You know, a lot of times things will come off your wall. They'll throw up, come at your head. I mean, you can have physical movement that's harmful. You can have just a string of really bad luck, and then physical ailments, all of these different things. But I would also say this, like people that are spiritually attacked, if they even suspect it, I'm like, get yourself in a sea salt bath, start putting frankincense on every single day, dive into your healing work. Why is it attaching to you? It's not going to attach to somebody who's spiritually strong. You have to have like a way in, so I was talking to my sweetheart earlier, and he was asking me a couple questions, just knowing I was getting prepared for you guys. And I was like, I don't even know, like, if they ask me about stories, I have so many that I've forgotten them, and we started talking and it fleshed out a couple. And I remember a different husband that I had for a short time, many, many years ago. He was under physical attack, spiritual attack. And because I was with him, it was impacting me, of course, and my little daughter. She was about 3 at the time. And he wasn't taking accountability. He was heavily drinking to numb his abuse from childhood. So he had a real gaping physical, emotional, spiritual wound, and just drinking it away, right? And so when I put down the law, I'm like, this isn't going to work for us. He stopped drinking, but that made everything get worse. And it was just massive attack. So during that time when I was helping him to shift that and clear it, I unintentionally absorbed an entity from him. And when that left me, it was so physical, you guys. My sweater lifted and I felt deep claws up my back when it left. And it was very, very scary and very real. I actually had somebody else. We went to like an underground church basement and they did some prayers over us. That's where it happened to me. And the woman said, she goes, honey, an empath will often take on entities for people they love. And she goes, fill that space up right now. And I just started filling it up with love. And I'm like, oh my God, I didn't know. I didn't know at that point that I was absorbing so much from other people, actual entities, to try to help them. So, and during that time, I'd always wear a cross necklace, and that was jumping off my neck. Every day I had it soldered on. I took it to a jewelry store and I'm like, can you please solder this on? I don't care what it looks like. I'm like, I do not want this coming off my neck again. I mean, so we were all under attack because he was under attack and wasn't doing the healing work. So that was very volatile. My daughter and I did have to leave him and sever all ties because it was dangerous for us. But
sorry,
yeah,
I went through that.
And
when you have this contract, there's a certain degree of life experiences and boot camp experiences that a lot of us go through.
Yeah.
And it's just us individually, it's also the people around us as well. It's a natural consequence of the work that we do.
It is.
People. But, and just for our viewers who might be a little bit confused about what we're talking about, because we're talking about some high level concepts here. So I just want to offer perspective to some of our viewers. We're talking a lot about spiritual protection via wound clearing and healing, right? So doing that internal work, doing that internal healing. So I just want to offer a perspective for our viewers. So your thoughts, your emotions, they're very real. We can acknowledge that these things are very real, but they don't exist in the physical, like say this piece of paper, because they're energetic. What are these beings? They're energetic. So when they're on a very similar frequency of a similar match, like energy attracts like energy. We know that through universal law, right? Okay. So when we're talking about this wound clearing and why trauma and wounding is so important to do that internal work for spiritual protection. I want you to think, if you're holding some unresolved wounding, there's going to be beings that are at that same energetic match, and they can see that. I think of my own journey, wounding that I thought I'd already dealt with, traumas that I thought I'd already dealt with. The moment I stepped into the work, all that was getting thrown back in my face again, because I hadn't done the deep internal work that I needed to do.
Right.
So when we talk about protection, doing that internal work of really getting into the nitty-gritty of your own wounding, your own traumas, right, your own insecurities, whatever that looks like, is really, really important, because unfortunately these entities or some earthbounds even are on the same frequency as some of them.
I mean, that's the permanent protection, is the inner work.
Yeah.
You know, it really is. So when people are having, it's not a punishment, and it's not like, oh, you're bad, you're having this happen. Absolutely not. It just reveals to you that there's something else to heal. And I work deeply with genetic programming and DNA. So sometimes people inherit it from their parents, right? They come in and they already are having issues because mom and dad didn't heal anything, and it was sent down the DNA. And now this child is already having stuff. So I like to work with people as early as possible so that they can, you know, have a better life instead of carrying these entities and traumas that are inherited. So I always like to also tell people this, the easiest way to do it. I just love the emotional frequency chart by Dr. David Hawkins, right? And if you look at that emotional frequency chart and you're like, okay, grief is way down here at the bottom, you know, and that's what just breaks my heart, because obviously I've lost a lot of people that I love, but when you're grieving, your vibration is very low. You know, and that's why a lot of times people will come to me in grief and they're like, I can't get out of my grief, and I feel like everything's going wrong now. And I'm like, yeah, I mean, this is an area that's so sensitive, because you don't want to think entities when you're thinking about somebody suffering with a loss, but it's a vibrational match, you know. And so, you know, they just think that, you know, they're sad and they'll get better. But when you'll know if you're attracting entities because you're not getting better, your grief isn't healing. Your body may be holding grief in different parts, but you may be experiencing it in different ways with, like, you know, just general bad luck, like you're losing your job, not knowing where to go, and it just keeps piling on you. It's like, please reach out for help if that's you, because it's not just about the entities, but it's about the need to release that grief and bring your vibration up into a more neutral space at least, and then work on getting higher and higher back up into love.
Right, exactly. I know that, you know, we've been talking a lot about earthbound spirits and entities, but there are hundreds of entities out there. Do you have any interesting stories on not demonic entities? We don't want to bring that energy into the discussion, but, you know, interdimensional or alien or anything, you know, something wild and crazy that you're like, I can't believe I'm looking at this and communicating with this entity right now. Do you have any interesting stories that kind of wowed you?
Well, I mean, I live right on the outside of Sedona. So I would say, like, every day. This is just an enormous open time loop portal area. And so many entities exist here. Many come through. This is just a very, very active area. So I've seen it. I don't know if anything's weird, because I've seen everything. And honestly, as soon as I see it, I just send it to the light. Doesn't matter if it's alien. It doesn't matter if it's a ghost. It doesn't matter if it's an entity. Everything goes to the light. And if it stays, then it's okay to talk to. So, but I mean, so this is just, I tend to live in areas like this.
So you just keep getting drawn to all the things.
I know. Like I said, it's just like who I am. Life would feel so weird if things were just locked in place, right? And didn't move. That would be really weird for me. But also, you know, this is where I do my best work. But I do remember, you know, just like a funny, weird story. This was when my daughter and I have learned. I always brought her up because she lived in all the haunted houses with me. She was around my work. She was around my clients. So I made sure she was always up to par with her trainings. She was always certified. She always got everything that I did. In fact, I also made all my husbands get certified. I just wouldn't live with a man in the house unless he took the classes. And then that's why it was truly up to him whether or not he stayed clear. But I'm like, it's not my job to do this for you every day. You're my partner, not a child. So take my course, get certified, and then I expect you to use it. And if you don't, then I guess we're not a match, right? So yeah, I would say have your partners take courses. Don't be the only one in the family servicing everybody, because you will get burnout. But my daughter and I were doing earlier, before the current way that I do it, I was doing a different way. It was much more long and elaborate. But when we were doing it, we were scanning my sister long distance, unbeknownst to her. And we're like, both of us saw it at the same time. And we're like, oh my God, Chrissy has a weird creature on her ankle. We had never seen that before. And it was like these long, knobby, knuckly things. And it was like hanging onto her ankle and going around and around and around with his like knees were bent, looked kind of like a little elf almost. Like, and we're like, what the heck is that? Like, we don't even know what category that is. And we're like, well, let's just go ahead and send it to the light, So we did that, cleared it. I talked to my sister later that day and I said, hey, how are you doing today? And she goes, wow, it's really weird you ask. I had the worst foot problems. Yesterday I had them. I changed my shoes. Today it hurts so bad. And she goes, and all of a sudden at like 5 o'clock, it just went away. And I was like, oh my gosh, I have to tell you something. Lonnie and I did a healing for you and we found a little creature on your ankle, and she goes, what? My daughter's an artist. She was a spirit artist. She used to draw people's spirit guides. And, So she can see and accurately paint it or draw it. So she sketched the little creature. And we sent it to my sister. I guess at that time it was probably fax. But we sent the picture and my sister saw the picture and she was like, oh no, this is too funny. She thought she was going to create like even a funnier story, because she knew exactly what this picture was. And she ran into her bookcase to get a little statue that she had purchased at a swap meet that looked exactly like that. And when she ran into her bookcase, the statue had gone. It disappeared. It's gone. Like it left our reality.
Wow. Took a look.
That happens. It's just like an airport, but it goes away instead of comes. So I don't know how it works, but it does happen. So we just thought that was really fun and very interesting. So I always tell people, you're going to have statuary of any kind. Make sure it's energetically aligned with you. Make sure that it's not dark and creepy. Make sure it's like angelic or, carries light, because there is energy to the statues, to everything.
Yeah.
Everything.
There certainly is. I always love those stories when you sometimes scan in on something and it's not something you expect, but you're like, what is this?
Yes.
It's you never stop being a forever student when you're doing this work. I always say you got to be you never stop learning.
That's what I love about it so much, because you can learn everything possible, right? From a textbook or a mentor teacher. But the real training is working with clients, and actually doing the work, because every single case is different. Every person is a different combination of things. Like you can't write a script and go, do this, then do this, because spirit will show you, no, because this is tied into the genetics. This is tied into the loss. This is tied in, and so you have to work with it a little differently with each individual.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of that, I did notice that you do teach rescue mediumship. Can you tell us a little bit about your program?
Oh, yes, I do. I taught it in person for so many years. And then I was like, I just have to put it online so people have access to it everywhere, because I was traveling a lot for it before. But it's very good. And so what I recommend, though, it doesn't you don't have to be a medium to use it. Like if let's say you're a mom like I was, and you think your child's suffering, they're having nightmares or night terrors or bad behavior, and you just can't put your finger on it. There's no reason why. If it is spiritual, take the course and you'll learn a lot of things about home protection, how to clear your child, and also how to actually get a connection to clear that whatever is there. And so a regular person can learn it. If you want to do it professionally, I always lean towards mediums taking the course because it's going to be different than the way that they learned it. And like I said, there were many ways that I learned it, starting from the priest in Medjugorje. But many, like I said, I never stopped learning and never stopped taking classes. The way that I teach it there, I share different ways, but they're one specific way that's so effective. It's just, it just changes everything. And you do not have to be a medium to do it.
Right. Wow.
That's amazing. I know when I was looking at your programs, and this is going to backtrack for a second, but I noticed that you had the rescue mediumship program tied with the paranormal.
Yes.
I was wondering, what kind of led you to that? Because I know, at least in my experience in connecting with some of the paranormal community, and I love the paranormal community.
Of course. Yeah.
But there's sometimes it's a little bit of disconnect in regards of rescue mediumship and the paranormal. And so when I saw you emerge those into a program, I'm like, oh, I got to ask about this. What kind of led you feel like this is a really good idea for a course to put out to the public for people to know about?
Yeah, because it's all under one umbrella. And then again, it's all belief systems, right? Because I went to Arthur Findlay College in England. It's a school for mediums, and it's a spiritualist school. And so they did not like talking about ghosts. And I'm like, we have 100 mediums in the room. What are you talking about? But they poo-pooed that. Like, they did not want to talk about ghosts, and they did not want to talk about crossing over, because they didn't want all the mediums that were getting trained to even think that was a thing, because they didn't want to put fear in them. And it's like, well, it's only fearful if you don't know how to get rid of them, So the whole school was like against that idea. But secretly at the top, they have their own rescue mediums. They just don't want the mainstream knowing. And I was like, that's just like every other religion. Up at the top, the people know the truth, but they don't teach that, right? And so that's where people get naively against certain things. They just don't they're not given the right information or all of the information. But in my work with people, it was like, how could you not? I did the paranormal work, and I still do some since 2004. I was living in a haunted house. It got real well publicized. It was in books and newspapers. And that's when I started really using the devices and gathering the evidence. Because I was like, this is crazy that you can actually get evidence like this, right? But I think the world shouldn't be separated into categories. And I think the people that are making money off haunted businesses, haunted B&Bs, or, whatever it is, they shouldn't worry about not making money because of the haunting. It's the story that brings people in. But even if I were to go there and clear the property to make it safe, which that's my goal, I want to make sure those houses are safe for the children growing up in them. I want to make sure that those houses are clear of entities, ghosts, they're in the right place. If a family is going to be bringing home entities because of their lifestyle choices, they're doing drugs and alcohol, or their crimes, or whatever it is that makes them more susceptible to attachments and entities, they might fill that house up again, but I'm going to do everything I can to make sure that on the earth plane that everyone's safe, and especially the children. But if you're talking about a business that's making money on a haunting, people that come to that, one of two things will happen. You can clear it. And if people are still coming to it, they will still have a haunted experience. It will not be a soul that has been left here to be, basically used for making money. The soul will be in heaven, but a tulpa will take its place. So there will be a created haunting because of the belief system surrounding the story and the folklore. So people will still experience hauntings in that location. And also they'll probably be bringing some of their own loved ones with them that will interact in that haunted space, because that's kind of what's expected. So the venues will not lose money, but deeper down, the soul will no longer be trapped. And I think that that's the most important thing to know.
That is very much so. Sure. We've covered so much information in this, and, wealth of information. Absolutely. I'm sure people are going to want to take your course and connect with you. How can they reach out and connect if they'd like to?
Yeah, definitely. You can go to my website, which is www.dianapalm.com. And up on the top, if you're interested in my courses, you'll see Spiritual Academy. Just hit that link and it'll take you right into my school. And the course that we're talking about today is Paranormal Rescue Medium. Like I said, you don't have to be a medium in order to do it. If people are already mediums and they want to deepen their work, I would recommend it, but you don't have to be a medium in order to take that course and be able to keep your home safe and, elevated and spiritually clear. I think that's important.
Sounds like
Very
a lot of
important.
people can get the benefits and the holisticness of the nature of the course that you've created, which is beautiful. It's the ripple effect.
It is.
Yeah.
It is. So thank you so much again for coming on the show, and you've been amazing. You really have been. Thank you so much
Thank
for
you
all the
guys. I really
information.
appreciate it. Thank you for having me on.
Absolutely. And Jordan, how can anybody reach out to us if they have any questions for Spirit Rescue Talk?
Well, if anybody has any questions for Spirit Rescue Talk, comments, or if you want us to expand on anything else that, that we've already talked about today, feel free to email us at spiritrescuetalk@gmail.com.
We are looking forward to hearing from you. And thank you again for just watching, reaching out, commenting, and hopefully we'll see you next time.